Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear subscribers, I would like to talk about the Trump new ultimatum to President Putin, but I shall start with Russian military operations or special military operations, and this is something that has occurred in the last week or 10 days. As always, what I try to do in these discussions is to rely on events and sources that are not covered by mainstream Western media or poorly covered or not covered at all. In fact, most of my information actually can be found on YouTube, but also on some other sources which I use, such as VK, which stands for In Contact, which is a Russian platform, a video exchange program, and RuTube, which is a Russian equivalent of YouTube, as well as newspapers and publications and various other sources and Telegram channels. So anything that I'm going to say to you is not any secret, is any classified or anything. It all can be found in open sources. Now, the reason that I want to start with the discussion of Russian special operations is because they've intensified in the last 10 days or so, and some of them are quite significant that actually show, first of all, what the Russian intentions are in the escalation of the crisis over Ukraine, but secondly, also who the real participants are and what role is being played by Britain, NATO, and Germany and others. So let me just focus on a few recent ones. What you hear in Western media is that the Russians, as Trump says, killing people in Ukraine, or as Western media says, bombardment of Kiev and residential districts, and they just repeat the same thing over and over. Whereas, in fact, one of the major blows in the last week was against two airports, the military airports, with transport planes coming from the West, from Western Europe. One of them was Stary Konstantin Airport, which was heavily bombarded by Russian hypersonic missiles, and a lot of Western hardware was blown up. What's interesting is that in this case, as in so many others, the Russians relied on special operations groups, which means that this is like Spetsnaz units that have been sent for reconnaissance and targeting, presumably. Also, they rely heavily on local support, and that was this is one of the new ways that they're doing it. So Stary Konstantin Airport is one. The next one was the Khmelnytsky Air Force Base, which is known that this is the major airport that receives Western deliveries. And according to the report that I saw, a German airplane with war material, as soon as it landed, was blown up by the incoming Russian missiles, which of course shows that there is intelligence at work, that they follow the developments on the ground, and that's another special op. Now, the third one that I read a lot about is the destruction of Australian cargo. So, as we have heard in the Western media, Australia decided to send 61 Abrams tanks to Ukraine, and many, many other things as well. I mean, the list is too long for me to read here, but it was a cargo vessel that was full of Australian hardware. Now, the Russian intelligence tracked its arrival to Turkey on a different vessel, and then it was put to the storages and various other facilities in the ports, and then it was reloaded to a different cargo that didn't look any different from any other cargo ship, container ship. It was all very much civilian looking cargo ship that went towards Odessa. Now, the Russians tracked it, and as soon as it entered territorial waters of Ukraine, it was blown up to pieces and it sank immediately. So this was another special op that happened in the last 10 days or so. Perhaps the most, the next one is the tunnel. Again, this one is in the Russian Telegram channels, which they actually provided the photographs, and I cannot verify whether this is genuine photos or not. But the important thing is it's a tunnel in Carpathian Mountains, presumably linking Ukraine and either Poland or Hungary. I'm not sure. Presumably Poland. And the presence on the ground of Russian special operations is there, also verified, because they were the ones who were coordinating the targeting. And finally, the Russian missiles arrived and blew it up in several places at the same time. And according to the reports, there was a lot of hardware inside the tunnel, which is Western vehicles and tanks and whatever else they were carrying. It was all blown up and the tunnel disabled. So this means, of course, that this is intensification of Russian special operations. And the purpose, of course, is to stop Western war deliveries to Ukraine. That is the purpose. So when Trump says that this is a conflict because a lot of people are dying, the soldiers are dying, and he's such pity on these poor soldiers that he wants to stop the war. Well, to stop the war, one has to stop military supplies, or at least to agree to some kind of cessation of military supplies, because otherwise, the Russians would stop and the military supplies would continue, and that would be supporting one side over the other. But the most spectacular special military operation in the last days, it's 10 days exactly. It happened on the 18th of July, is the Russian attack on the British base in Ochakov. Ochakov is the military base on the very close to Crimea. And I verified this report, and there were many, many sources on it. So this is not just like one, but it was completely ignored in Western media, like zero, nothing whatsoever. But many, many reports, both including on YouTube and on VK, Vkontakte, Russian source. So anyway, what happened was that the 3 Russian boats with special military operation group, Spetsnaz, they crossed the channel between Crimea and the continent, and they disabled the guards, and they penetrated into the facility, and they kidnapped, as they claim, 2 British officers and 1 MI6 officer. And they provide their names, and I'm not going to go into the names now, because if you need to, you can check it on your own. And that's not my point. The point is that they claim to have seized documents and jack data jack with targeting materials, where these officers were supposedly participating in targeting shadow missiles on Crimea, and of course this is proof that the Russians are collecting on direct participation of Great Britain in these operations. Now, the British press reported some former British military officer captured in Kursk, and of course this is former, and they said this is volunteer, that he's not has anything to do with British Army. Now, these officers are acting British Army officers, and they were targeting Russian territory, which strictly speaking could be interpreted as a casus belli. But at this point, the Russians are not declaring war on Britain, but they are probably in possession of very, very serious material on the participation of the British intelligence and British officers in bombing Russia. So this is all happening in the context of two important strategic events. On the one hand, the Americans deployed nuclear missiles in Britain, and at the same time, President Putin inaugurated a new submarine of the Borei class, which is a strategic submarine capable to carry strategic ballistic missiles. That could be used for strategic defense of Russia in case of a war. So this was a major political event on the 27th, 28th of July, and these two events mark another escalation in this so far war of words, not yet a real war. So this brings me to the second part of this presentation, which is what does it mean that Trump is now saying he had enough and he wants to shorten the date from 50 days to 10 days or 12 days. Okay, so if the Russians don't do anything, he's going to do secondary sanctions on countries that buy Russian oil and gas. Now, one thing that is really strange to me when I hear him is that when people issue an ultimatum, they say that we don't disagree with this and that, and unless you change it, we will do this and that. Now, it's clear what he says he's going to do. He's going to do what he says, secondary sanctions. But what is not clear, what exactly is he not happy with? The Russians presented their memorandum. What is it that Trump is not happy with? What does he object to? Which part of the 33 points is he objecting that the Russians demand 4 provinces and he's ready for 2? Or if you don't accept any Russian territory gains, then say so. We're not accepting any Russian territorial gains. Does he object that Russian language be given a protection in post-war Ukraine? Yes or no? Does he agree that Russian Orthodox Church has a right to exist? Yes or no? Limitations on Ukrainian armed forces? Yes or no? To say simply, stop the fighting or else, doesn't mean anything at all. So that makes me think that there's something else hiding behind it, because it's not serious. It's not a serious position when you threaten a country with serious sanctions unless they do what? Just stop fighting whatsoever. And what? And then happens next 50 years of Cold War, like in North and South Korea. It doesn't make much sense. But let me go, and the last thing to discuss with you is, what are the chances that he does introduce 100% taxes or tariffs on countries that buy Russian oil? So here's the data. I did research on this. The data is that the revenue from oil and gas constitute 27% of Russian budget. 27%. Now, the entire gas and oil exports is divided like this. 40% of it goes to China. 20% of it goes to India. 15% of it goes to Turkey through the Turkish Stream pipeline, which in turn is sold to European customers such as Greece and Serbia and Hungary and so forth. And then 10 goes to Brazil, or slightly less than 10, and 15 goes to shadow fleet, which means Russian tankers, which are called shadow, but there's nothing shadow about it. These are Russian tankers that deliver oil through all kinds of intermediaries to a variety of countries all over the world. Egypt is one of them, as I know. So this is what's going to happen. The Chinese are definitely not going to comply. They already said it publicly, said it angrily, said it to to von der Leyen when she tried to teach them a lesson how to behave in relation to China, to Russia. The Indians most likely also are not going to comply. I watch the Indian press, and the Indians are saying, no, we're not going to be taught to Britain and US are telling us what to do. We're an independent country. We value our relationship with Russia. And besides, before they teach us a lesson what to do, they should stop buying Russian oil and gas themselves, and they haven't done it, and they're buying it through intermediaries just as much as before. So this is what India's response is. Turkey, I doubt seriously very much that Trump is going to punish Turkey, its strategic ally in NATO, now that the relations between US and Turkey improved slightly, now that it's very, very important partner in the situation in Syria. Doubt very much that he's going to dare to impose secondary sanctions on Turkey. Now, the only one that he could actually punish is Brazil, and that is 10% of the 100%. Now, even if it's 20% of the Russian oil exports, in terms of the revenue, it's going to be the fifth. The fifth of the 25% is 5%. Can Russia withstand 5% diminution or scaling down of its revenue? Of course, yes. This is not going to change Russian finances in a way that it would have any impact on the conduct of the war. So, Mr. Trump, it's not going to work. Your tariffs would only antagonize your partners and friends and the potential customers of US businesses, and that means this is not going to work. If it is not going to work, then why is he doing it? I'm sure that there are people who are qualified to tell him it ain't gonna work. Why are you doing it? And that brings me to my final point. It seems to me that it could be that something else is going to play out. Maybe even the coalition of the willing is going to send their troops to Ukraine. Maybe they want to intensify the Western help to Ukraine. I don't know what it is, but obviously we are on the road of escalation that can take unpredictable turns. And finally, my dear friends, since you listened to the end, I would like to tell you that yesterday I had a big interview about my life. It was 2.5 hours, my biography from the very beginning, from childhood to my retirement. And I'm going to be posting those videos in the coming weeks, in the coming days. I'm going to start. So please watch for those. And they will be under the Personal Narratives playlist. And I remind you, I have many playlists. If you are interested in history, it's going to be European history and Russian history and Soviet history and post-Soviet history and personal narratives. Please subscribe to my channel, watch my videos, and of course, read my books. Thank you. Until next time, goodbye.